thing that I like most about being a dad is that I see that I'm about to impact the world. What's up? It's your boy Humble Dad back with another edition of Humble Dad Podcast. We're gonna have a great show this evening. Why? Because I said so. We're gonna be talking about blended families. It's one of the things that's going on in today's society where there are blended families, where there is somebody may have passed away, somebody got a divorce, whatever the case may be. And so I wanted to talk about what that looks like and how can we make it better, or what are the do's and the don'ts, the pros and the cons that are related to that. And we got a dope panel that we're going to talk about it, give you problems and solutions this evening. So we're going to welcome to the stage. Before we do that, let me let you know the question that we have is, what's the most challenging part of your job? What's the most challenging part of your job? And we're going to welcome to the stage my homie, my friend, Mr. Prototype. I don't know why I say your name like that. It just feels right to me.
Hey, whatever, whatever gets you going, man.
What's up?
Man, the most challenging part of my job. So I'm a software engineer. Sometimes I am the only one with the skill set on the team. So, um, the most challenging part is having nobody to, kind of ping anything off of, or no support. So, being a specialist sometimes just leaves you to always figuring it out by yourself. So, I would say that's the most challenging part of my job.
Mm, that's what's up. That's what's up. Okay, I can see that. That makes sense to me. But I'm sure you always figure it out because you're a problem solver.
I do what I can.
That's what's up. Hey, welcome back to the stage. None other than, give me a second.
Hey, what's going on, man? Thank you for having me. Most challenging thing about part of my job is that I don't have healthy boundaries because I do information technology as well, but I also do it from a telework perspective. And so the clock just never stops, you never have a line of separation or a line of demarcation. So trying to have that work personal balance, you know what I mean, is one of the challenging things for me. You know what I'm saying? Thank you
That's
for
what,
having me though.
oh, absolutely, man. I appreciate you being here. And then we're gonna welcome somebody that's been gone for a while, but I'm glad she's back. Miss Penny, how's it going? You're on mute.
It's going great.
That's good. What you got on the question?
I think the hardest part is one, remembering the federal regulations, so they change all the time. So being fresh on the brain about that. And two, holding different departments accountable for their quality of work. It's kind of hard, trying to charge up and see who did what, who made a mistake for what, and for them to accept accountability for that. So it's kind of hard.
Mm. I can see that. And back by popular demand, we call him Lost in Translation. What's up, homie?
How you doing, sir? How goes it?
I'm doing well, bro. I'm doing
Good,
well.
good.
How about yourself?
I'm pretty good. I can't complain. Just glad to be here.
That's what's up. Have you ever thought about being a voiceover?
Sometimes, yeah,
Sometimes you think about it. Okay.
yeah.
All right. What you got on the question?
The most challenging part of my job is getting people to open up and tell me exactly what they need. At the same time, they're trying to hide it from me. You know what I mean? Like, look, I'm trying to help you, but you hiding it is not going to help. You know what I'm saying? So then you have to use different techniques to get people to open up. Try to put yourself on the same side of the table verbally with you and the customer, and not you and the problem. You know what I'm saying? You try not to be the problem. So
Yeah. That
that's the
sound
most
like
difficult
parenting.
part. Yeah,
It sound like parenting at times for me, for sure.
basically, that's exactly what it is.
So, appreciate you for being here as usual.
Thank you, sir.
All right. Welcome to the stage. She's new to the show. She's visiting, stopping by. None other than Miss Paradise Paris. How you doing, ma'am?
Good evening, everyone. I'm doing great.
Good. What you got on the question?
I would say the hardest part of my job would be to constantly keep myself motivated. It's very easy in the job that I do to experience burnout really fast. It's a lot of individualistic work. I'm salary, but I'm still kind of hourly, and it just really depends because some days I have a very, very, very light workload, but I'm working like 10 hours on end. when I am working. And when you're sitting there and you're fighting for work, it's just like you have to find ways to keep yourself motivated.
Yo, mute.
All right, thank you for being here. I did listen. I saw that prototype. I did a Dwayne, didn't I? That's what's up. Hey,
But that's how you know Lost in Translation's a good guy. I was gonna let it go. I wasn't gonna say nothing.
I'm glad you remained yourself, bro. Welcome to the stage, Miss Ash. How's it going?
Hello, I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing well. Appreciate you being here.
The hardest part of my job is trying to help somebody in their loss, and it's a language barrier. Very hardest part to get them to understand that the bus goes one way and it also goes the opposite way. So it's like, I need this bus. No, your directions say you need to be on the opposite side. And that can get very hard when they don't use the app to try to help them out to move around as well. And you're trying to drive and also keep an eye on everybody else to make sure ain't nobody back there getting frustrated, because I do have passengers that like to yell, sit down, let the driver drive. I have an older guy. He rides periodically and he gets started. And I'm talking, this is like 5 o'clock in the morning.
Wow.
So that would be the hardest part of my job, is to communicate what bus they actually need to be on in the direction.
That's what's up. The hardest part of my job, I'm an academic interventionist for a math department in a school district, and dealing with teachers that think they know it already. Right? So I have 20 years of experience in teaching math at the collegiate level and secondary level, and trying to get them to understand that I already know what they're trying to get to and trying to get them to change. So basically managing adults. That I would say that's the challenging part of my job. Okay.
I'm gonna tell you something else that's challenging about my job. One, the language barrier, for real, because I work at a all Asian facility, and so getting them to understand what I'm talking about, trying to understand what they're talking about, it's pretty difficult. Even I guess as a African American, some of the things that are offensive, they don't quite understand why it's offensive. And so some of the words that they use in Chinese, is very offensive for African Americans. Like I hear the word nigga every day.
Oh, wow.
And it's hard to get them to understand how that affects me and the African Americans that work there. So it's very challenging.
Every day? That's crazy.
Yeah, because in
Asians be saying it.
Yeah, because in Chinese, the word nigga means Like if we were talking and we were trying to remember something, we'd be like So every day it's like nigga every day, and you're trying to get them to understand how that could be offensive. And
That
is that a you problem or a they problem?
It's a me problem and a they problem. I mean, it's a company problem.
Well, it's context, and they're not speaking. They're not saying nigga. They're
well, it doesn't matter because at that point, when they know that what it means, you would never know if they're meaning it in that way or not, because they know what it means and they're saying it by you. So how would you know when they are using it in that way and when they're not?
I think sometimes you got to be like he was saying, Prototype was saying, like context. Like if they're using it in context towards each other, because they're speaking fast in their native dialect, that could be a thing. But if they're addressing,
you would never know. Like they talk about each other, they talk about certain things. You would never know if they're talking about you or they're talking about someone else. You would.
I think there's a song out there that says like drink water and manage your business.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Is there a song for real that says drink water?
I never heard that song.
I get where she's coming from.
Yeah,
I would say in not necessarily like pennies, but mine is in the adverse. When I get a lot of customers calling, because I'm a claims adjuster, and so I deal with people's property all day long, and the entitlement that comes from them wanting a sense of urgency for something to be done right now, money to be issued right now because they're in a detrimental situation. A lot of times what I get is caught up in conversations that literally have nothing to do with my job, but their personal preferences, such as them talking about people with language barriers, or such as them already hearing my dialect and assuming who I am on the back end, or something such as them getting into current events, politics, things like that. And it's very compromising. And it puts you in a very eerie situation because they're not looking at the customer there or the other people around you. They're looking at you and they're anticipating you to have this certain demand or this certain rapport or to respond or carry the conversation in a different direction. And that could be very challenging. I think it's something that makes people have to work on themselves constantly. But I absolutely get where Penny is coming from because I've been on the phone where two people are talking and they're Korean and I have the language barrier, right?
Mhm.
And I'm getting a translator and I could basically hear the translator not saying certain things because he was being derogatory towards me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I totally
Yeah.
feel that. I was just kind of speaking towards the dialect and the language barrier. I personally would be offended if like two white people was in the office just saying nigga over and over and over again. You know what I mean? Or, but Koreans or whatever, I don't know if I'd be offended. I'd probably be like, man, they, find a different word. But
I mean, because if you think about it, a
Yeah.
lot of the things that they say is already they feel like they are superior. A lot of people in the rooms that I'm in, they'll say like, well, we do it like this. We know Americans don't do it that way, or y'all don't do it that way. Things like that. So you would never know. And plus, it seems like it's an easy thing to get over, but when you're working and you hear that in your ear, it takes you off sometimes.
Yeah, you can't
it takes
unhear what you
off.
heard. Yeah, I feel that.
Yeah, so
I feel that.
it's not as hard as easy as it seems.
Man, I don't think we've ever had an opening question go to that particular conversation. but
Opening questions didn't lead to the M-bomb either. You know what I'm saying?
I know that's for sure, but I think it's cool, But you also have to think about it. I mean, it's their establishment as well. I mean, you can always choose not to be there in the environment, So sometimes you can't, but that's really what sometimes it boils down to, So let's get it started, get it cracking. So we're gonna go with the first question, as it relates to blended families. What would you say? What type of mindset should a step parent have, right? Because I mean, you going into a situation where these kids are not yours, right? Then you have to deal with all the things that come with that. So let's talk about it. What type of mindset should a step parent have? We'll start with my homie Prototype, and then you choose who goes next.
I mean, so I come from a blended family, so I kind of understand how those things work, as in everybody's accepting. We're all family. We love each other the same. I know it's hard for a lot of people to kind of step into that role, particularly for people who come from nuclear families that aren't blended. They don't do well in blended family situations. But the people who come from like single parent homes and growing up with blended family, I think we have a better idea on how blended families work. So I think those people do a little bit better. So I mean, the mind frame is, hey, we're all here together. We're all family, and we take care of each other.
Who you got going next?
Let's go with Ash.
Yeah, she's still on mute, darling.
I'm sorry, pulled a Dwayne. Anyway, mine is sort of like Prototype. I come from a blended family, a big blended family, and he is right. You need to move as a unit. It ain't no this my step kid. You need to take ownership for that kid or kids, depending on the situation, and also an open mind because you don't know the relationship dynamic. You don't know how you were brought up in the conversation as to being introduced to these kids, or if they already had said behavioral problems prior to you getting involved in the situation. So I would say it is definitely an open mind, and also we're a unit and nobody's better than nobody. It's equal slate. but I know a lot of people don't do that. Next one is lost in translation.
Thank you, Ashley. One of the things that you're going to have is a level of maturity. And I'll explain to you like this. There are inherent biases that go unspoken when it's your child or their child. You know what I mean? And you have to have a certain level of maturity to say, this is our child now. This is our responsibility, and we're going to have to share it. And a lot of times people have inherent biases that go unsaid. So you're going to have to speak some of that stuff out and talk about it, because a lot of times it goes unsaid. So a level of maturity needs to be had when you're blending families. And we're going to go with Paradise next.
Whew, this may be the unpopular one. I am a little bit biased because I do not have any outside siblings, but I also do not have any children. So, like getting older, I have a different perspective around step parenting. I do recognize the fact that it is a thankless job, and I think you should basically maneuver the situation based off how the children respond to you, not the parent. But I think that the boundary that needs to be set in place is for both parents as well as the children to understand that the parents' hierarchy comes first, and the step parent is not there to interfere and be the superhero. The step parent is there as a last resort. And I don't think that that's taken into consideration a lot of times because people are in the house. But again, that's just how I view it. I don't think that the step parent actually should be the person intercepting what that other gendered parent does all the time, just off of free will or just because they're there in the house. I think it should be heavily communicated, and the two people who made the child should be more proactive and prone to ensuring that the child gets what they need before the step parent. And I will go with give me a second podcast.
I think you got to be called to it. And I think that sometimes you get with someone in a relationship and you think because you're called to that person that you're called to the family. And I think there's a huge difference. And I think you have to identify, I love what you said, lost in translation. It takes a sense of maturity. I've been married twice, and unfortunately they didn't work out, but they were both blended families. I would say the first time I wasn't mature enough for it, but then the second time, that's just the honest assessment of the fact that I just wasn't called to it. And while I enjoyed her, I had to understand that there were things that came with that situation that weren't attached to me. You know what I mean? And so in trying to usurp my masculinity, you know what I mean? I never got involved with the child like that, but I tried to get involved behind the scenes. And so when that wasn't realized, my maturity, and then the fact again that I wasn't called to it, really came to fruition. And so it impacted relationship, with the child and things of the such. And because I felt like it was hard to create a relationship out of a space that I wasn't leveraged from the woman that I was with. But I just think, in short, you got to be called to it. I think there is a person that's called to being a bonus father or a bonus mother, and we thank God for every person that fulfills that role successfully. But if you're not called to it, then it just won't work. And of course, Miss Penny.
I think for a blended family, you got to have the mind frame that you are helping the child grow to become an adult, that you are helping the growth of the family that you want to create. I also think that the discussion should be between the parents and the step parent before the child is introduced to the step parent. I feel like you 3 or 4 should be on the same page first before the child enters into a relationship with the step parent. And I feel like that should be talked out about how discipline goes, how just co-parenting should be, and the relationship, see how the relationship is between the two parents, the main parents. So I think the mind frame definitely should say that it's on the growth of the family and on the growth of the child. And to remember that it's a child of God, not a child of your current partner's ex. It's a child of God. And so you're helping taking care of a child of God. And if you keep that in mind, I think, things go well with that.
That's what's up. I think it's
Dwayne Jones.
welcome to the stage. Hey, we've been using your name a lot, Dwayne.
Uh-oh. My pockets wasn't ringing any, so
It's on you, bro.
oh man, for me it's a Christ mindset. Like you have to have for me it's a compassion. So having compassion for someone that needs that assistance, that help, that guidance through life. So that's how I look at it from the step parenting standpoint. It's not just the because it's difficult doing it on your own, but also for the child as well. It's difficult to grow up without. So filling the void.
It's interesting,
Humble Dad. Can I throw one more thing in there?
bro. It's a conversation, homie.
Yeah. So when you're called to it, right? I think when when you miss that space, it's because the conversation was not had at every level prior to getting into that situation. So yeah, you talked about everything under the sun, but the kids that were involved. And so I believe that that's a conversation that has to be had directly, intentionally, and it has to be about the child at the end of the day. If you got children involved, and if you're in a relationship and your children aren't at the top of the conversation, or at least the second part after I got to know your name, then your priorities are in the wrong order when you're in that relationship anyways. One of the biggest mistakes, and I'm saying this because I don't know who's listening, but one of the biggest mistakes I made was trying to shelter my daughter away from the relationship that I was getting her into, and then forcing her to be a daughter to a mother she didn't have a relationship because I wanted to be with her. So that conversation has to be had. It has to be a joint conversation, and you don't have the right to exclude kids out of it, out of the old, Black theology. Kids don't make choices. Yeah, they don't make choices, but they have feelings. You know what I'm saying? So I think it's important that you include children appropriately at the right echelon, and in a relationship, you and whoever you with, that conversation is very intentional, had at all levels. I just wanted to make sure I added that to that point.
You keep saying being called to it. I feel like that is an excuse. I feel like you're making a bunch of excuses for just being a compassionate person, man. You're called as a man to protect the community. You're called as a man to protect the kids in the community as a whole. Helping a kid at a basketball court is no different really from helping the kids in your home, and being a man in the community is what you're called to do. So I mean,
you
that's
can
for every
mentor.
man.
You can mentor anybody. I'm not being a mentor and being a father figure are two different things.
Not necessarily.
I mean, again, I'm gonna use the word called. I have a charge as a man, as you would say, to be an example, to be a person that people can look up to,
Right.
because I'm a person of good integrity, and that would but would allow you to look up to me. Don't mean I'm required to be your father. And I think those are two disconnects. And I personally choose to try to know the difference in between.
What's the difference? I'm sorry. What's the difference?
I mean, the relationship is different. The access is different. How you can influence is different. The amount of time is different, and you have to be called to be in that intimate space with a child. And whereas if I'm your basketball coach, yeah, I may wipe your shoes off just like I wipe my sons off, but I'm not called to the responsibility of what it really takes to teach you to be a man unless there's a vacancy, and then I'm called upon in that particular role.
One word.
Excuses,
One
man. Like your character is your character. You know what I'm saying? You're the same man as a coach as you are as a father. I don't understand.
Paradise. Give me one minute. Dwayne, did you have something you wanted to say?
No. Paradise got it.
All right, go ahead.
One word is favoritism. And I get where Give Me a Second podcast is coming from, because not only did I see my dad do it, right? Like anything my brothers got involved in, he became coach. It didn't matter what it was. When they played football, he would go rally up other kids that was on the team in our neighborhood, although the other coaches probably were off, whatever. He had a truck. So he would go and take those kids to, go to the game to ensure that they got to the game. But the difference was, if we were hungry at the game, we had access to his resources. We were on call for daddy. If they were hungry at the game, it was, did their mom send them with something while they were at the game? Now, once he was with all of us collectively, nobody went without eating, right? Because now you're under his purview collectively. However, the difference is still favoritism. If those other children's parents allowed to do something, he intercepted and said, you know what, I can't make that call for them, but I can make that call for y'all. You don't get to do that. And I think the difference is when you're carrying yourself as a certain type of character, right? The intention that you have about being the role model for your child looks a lot different, and you're a lot more careful and you're a lot more tedious about how you are when it comes to other people who are around you, right? Because you just don't have that same type of behaviors a lot of times. I look at me personally, and this is why I say like being a step parent for me, it would be a very difficult transition. But I look at becoming a parent makes you more conservative. If you really want to be a good parent, a lot of times it makes you more conscious. It makes you more cautious of how you behave and things like that. But it's something so simple as being a step parent. If that person you're with, right? If you're with them, that don't mean that you got to bond with their kids. People expect that. That's the moral thing. But their kids make a determination, especially once they get older. You're talking about 13, 14, 15. If they want to have a relationship with you, a lot of them have already separated in their mind. Just because you go with my mom, my dad, don't mean that I have to have a relationship with you. So I get why he's saying if you are called, because the kids have to choose you the same way the parents choose you. It's the individual aspect, and favoritism definitely makes a difference. Like Lost in Translation was talking about, there is an inherent bias when it comes to your own children. You can watch your children do things and have no problem with it. You can go and see somebody else's child do something, and you're going to ridicule the hell out of them.
The other thing, one more thing, I'm promising I'm done here. I'm a mentor to everybody, but my son is called to my seed. And I'm talking about my inheritance. And that's going to always be the difference. The person that's designed, that came from me, or the person that I'm charged through marriage and relationship, yeah, they got that access to that seed. So that's the biggest difference for me. I wanted to make sure I was clear about called versus charged. You know what I'm saying?
And I got something to add to this. So I was having an interesting conversation with my little brother last night, and he was talking about, how he wants to be involved in the community. And as soon as he started, talking, he was talking about, coaching his daughter's, soccer team so he could get closer to her and stuff like that, outside the home. And I was thinking, I had to pause him, and I went and I looked up the definition of community while we were in that conversation. And community, one of the definitions is a group of people living together in one place, especially one practicing common ownership. So even in that, living in a common place, it's the same thing as like neighbor. Like the Bible says, love your neighbor. Your closest neighbor in your marriage is your wife. Right. So in the same thing as for community, it's like you have your own community within inside of your household. And then it branches out to your neighbor, your block, your city, your state. So as for a community from that standpoint, yeah, I can see that. But the closest one is in your household.
That's good. Did anybody else have something to add to that? Because it seems like we are kind of saying similar things but different. Like it's a matter of perspective, or kind of like how have you lived your life thus far? That's what
I
it
would
kind of
say this.
I hear selfish and unselfish.
To me, it's more or less. It's not. It's more of the direction of the children, because y'all know I'm a single parent, but when my friends and anybody kids come around, let's just say we were all somewhere, I'm gonna step in and take care of the kids while y'all do whatever y'all do. That's just me. And I'm guessing I can see where Give Me a Second podcast is coming from. When you call to it and step to it, I'm always there. Like I'm always sis, I'm always auntie or cousin, because I'm going to take ownership of that road. I'm going to make sure the kids fed, make sure the kids are good, make sure they're safe. That's my thing. That's what I do. Because to me, I just feel like step parent to me wouldn't be that bad. It'd be a little work, but it wouldn't be that bad. It's just how you govern yourself and how you feel about children. Because some people have kids and they really just don't care. They don't care to make sure their child is introduced to the new spouse or introduced to the other children in that household. And that's where the actual disconnect come from. And I can see where Paradise is coming from with the favoritism, because if you're in a household, dad is in a household with a woman that has a child over there, well, into my child's eye, that's going to look like it's favoritism because you're over there spending time and not coming over here and spending time. So I can get where they're going with it, but at the same time, as Prototype said, it's about being an adult. You need to break it down and come over here and get some introducing going on so we can work together so everybody can understand we all on the same page. Because like Dwayne said, it is a community. Like if you're going to really raise your children and make them feel secure about their position, you do need to come together. Everybody needs to take in consideration everybody's feelings. I know we're not going to get along every day, happy go lucky, like the movies pretend and show us. But at the end of the day, as grown people, we do need to sit down. We do need to talk to our kids. We do need to make sure everybody understand everybody's role, because just because we're all family doesn't mean that there's not this one sibling to think you get more than me or I'm getting more than you. Favoritism can be shown, but you're actually not trying to do that. It's just that this is what's being rewarded right now. You need a little bit more discipline. We just went through that this weekend. You know, it's just you got to understand that part as being a parent. And being a step parent, you do have to understand there are boundaries. But if you want to ensure that you have the actual role of and have an influence on that child, that's part of you stepping up and stepping into that role as well. And I think a lot of us, we don't step in because we're going to let it fall wherever it fall. Because I'm not trying to get too attached if this breaks down and I got to move on, you know.
Correct.
And I think a lot of times these what they call it, the pillow talking is what is not going outside the door. We need to have it at the table and bring everybody to the table instead of just in the bedroom.
I will also add to that Prototype mentioned something: selfish and unselfish. And you're absolutely correct. And we hear those words and we hear it as a bad thing, but in actuality, right? Like when you have your children, that is your legacy. So one of the things that, again, I'm biased. So I will never look at this the way that other people look at it when it comes to them having a blended family. I had a nuclear family. My situation is completely different. I understand I'm an anomaly. But one of the things that we dealt with in my dad's family was outside children having access to family heirloom. That is such a struggling situation because there's no blood ties there. You were created out of infidelity. And this not even, you know, this ain't even no step kids. This is like they're actually, you know, related. They share a parent. They share an outside parent. So there's no real blended nothing. There is, you know, 3 whole children over here, and they have access to something that their name isn't even attached to. And to watch that family struggle when you're talking about keeping something in the family, or you're talking about something that your children can pride in, this is where the selfishness and the biasness come in. And I think we look at those things as such a terrible thing, but like Ash said, a lot of times we need to put the stuff on the table, because that to me goes under the generational curses of sweeping stuff under the rug, where these children need to know, yes, you guys are family. We brought you together. We created you separately, but we're bringing you together for a greater purpose now, because the love that we have for each other overshadows everything else. And that doesn't mean we love you differently. However, you have to understand that you have more than one family now. And your access to your extended family looks a lot different than your access to your immediate family. And until we're having those conversations, the art of knowing, you know, blended families is always going to be very difficult for people to mitigate. Because nobody wants to actually say, sometimes your kids have personalities that your spouse don't like, right? People don't want to say that. Sometimes your spouse got a personality that your kids don't like. But we here for the greater good. We here to make it work. And the end goal is for us to be a family unit and for us to be a structure. So we're not breaking this up because people don't like each other. But the first thing people say is, well, if they don't like each other, we need to get them out the house. That may not always be the answer. Maybe sometimes it's sitting in the back talking because you were called to be this person's spouse. You just weren't called the parent for this person. Eventually, they have to leave the nest too. Eventually, they have to go on. But we hold true to these values and we forget at the end of the day, the only person that you're gonna be stuck with, you should be stuck with, is your partner, not your kids.
I know too many people in the blended family world that liked each other but never met their children. And they ended up being bad influences on those kids. And if those kids are the priority, as they should be, that's why I said that the children should be introduced extremely early. I mean, and I get the whole safeguard thing. You know, I don't want to introduce, 5 and 6 men to my children or whatever. Well, you need to be very delicate when you have children. Period. It ain't about I need to safeguard. No, I need to know up front, because I'm not gonna go into the lifehood of a relationship. I'm gonna be with you 3 and 6 months, 9 months, and you just now meeting my kid. Now we're gonna have a problem if there's no compatibility there. But prototype, I need you to go back real quick, because you talk about the word I use, called, and I want to make sure that you understand that if I decide to be in a relationship, I do decide to be called, at least for that season, hopefully for an eternity, but at least for that season. But I'm not called to the neighborhood. You know what I'm saying? I'm an example to the neighborhood, but I am not called to the streets. You know what I mean? And so if I see a young man or a young woman in my sphere of influence, out of abundance of wisdom, yeah, I'm gonna give them that tutelage and that guidance, and it's up for them to hear. But ultimately, if they acting up, I'm gonna call their daddy. So I need you to understand. Explain to me what you mean by the excuse of me using the word called. You know what I mean?
Because it's kind of like passing the buck. Now, I coach kids on a regular basis. I hold camps, STEM camps, and everything. So I have my kids involved in all this stuff, and I don't treat any kid different. If I see one kid acting up, I'm like, hey, you need to stop that. As a matter of fact, a kid I coach posted something on his Instagram of some kids fighting. I responded to him like, hey, stay out the way. You ain't into that. You got a future. You know what I'm saying? Like, so any kid I ever coached or I'm around, if I'm putting in work with my kids, I'm inviting the teammates. Like, you know what I'm saying? So I think it's not that I want to. Do I want to spend individual time focusing on my kids, training my kids, teaching my kids? Absolutely. But if I see other kids in need, I'm gonna definitely invite. I'm not gonna leave any kid left behind. But I think it's the idea that Paradise said she comes from a nuclear family. The very first thing I said was nuclear people have a hard time with blended families. The idea, y'all very selfish. People who come from, I came from a single parent home. I understand that we all come from different things. My grandmother was married to my godfather, which was her third husband. You know what I'm saying? So I came into it with external relatives, that I'm not necessarily, because he already had kids. I was born into it. So I understand how a blended family, a blended network works. And it was a beautiful thing. We all loved each other. I know plenty of people. Everybody in the city is my cousin. I'm safe everywhere. You know what I'm saying? So I didn't have those problems. I see nothing but beauty out of it. But people who come from a nuclear family just struggle from having that, understanding that, taking in kids and the idea. Like, if kids was outside, there used to be a kid that his parents didn't get home. When my daughter got home, so I'll make sure I bring that kid into the house. Like, hey, here's some s'mores. You need help with your homework until your mom and dad get home. Blah blah blah. I had my neighbor's number. It's a community thing, and all men are called to it. Saying that I'm not called to the neighborhood is false. God called you to that. That's your purpose as a man. You know what I'm saying? I mean, but you can pass it if you want to.
I'm saying I'm not
that's
called to
that's a
father
fault on
the
your character.
neighborhood. Everything you're saying is mentorship. I never said nothing about not being a mentor.
It's the same thing.
I'ma tell
Mentorship,
you-
fatherhood. The only thing different is the amount of access. You know
And
what
I
I'm saying?
said
But your
that.
character is your character.
I said,
You know what I'm saying?
access was the
So-
difference. That's exactly what I said. Did I not use the word access, y'all?
But you keep saying called. So when you say called, it's saying that this
So,
is
hey, listen.
something that's only placed on me.
As a coach,
If I'm called, and you can pass the buck on it, like, oh, I'm not called. No,
I'm gonna say
your duty as a man is to your community, to
So-
your house, to your community, and to the world. That's your duty as a man.
coach the
period.
hell out of my son. I appreciate that.
I do hear a little projecting, and I don't mean this in a negative way, but you can tell there is a passion there, and that's the reason there is a degree of separation, because you already inherently was born into it. So the idea is insinuating that I don't share that same type of sentiment. I actually do. I have a very good idea of community. My dad took in my cousin, who is 9 years older than me, and he raised him. He was there in the house. Like, I was born into that. He already took on other responsibilities well before he even had his own children. So him extending himself to other people's children, my brothers, their best friend lived with us. his last 2-year high school after his mom died. So it's like the sense of extension is there. I would not have an issue with that. I do it with my friends. Majority of my friends have children. So when you're saying, hey, I'm extending myself, I'm making myself present and privy for this, we need help, right? That's it, the basis of it. We need help. You control how you conduct yourself around children that you care about. You control how you conduct yourself around kids that potentially may need somebody to believe in them. However, I think the difference here is the option of choice. Whereas you're willing to go into it and you're willing to go ahead and knock it out the park and take it on head on because you've had that experience, you've been that kid. I'm coming from a position to where I have the option. I have the option, not just because I come from a nuclear family. I have the option because I'm a single woman now who has watched other people go through it. I've seen my best friend struggle with her mom dating a man that she didn't necessarily care for. I've watched it. And then her sibling came and they still ended up family. Your parents are making decisions to expand your family, but it literally has nothing to do with the children. It's contingent on that person's happiness. So the children have a domino effect in this. And it's like when the children have an input or a say, it comes as, for some people, my children have to automatically respect the person I'm with, or my children determine who I'm going to be with. And I don't think that that's fair, because not only are you intervening on your happiness, you're placing everything around the contingency of children as if they're going to be in the household the whole time. That's why I don't think it's fair, because morally, we all feel like children should be helped, right? But realistically, what you're talking about, it comes from a standpoint of projection. You can't offset what you feel like somebody else's responsibility should be because of how you determine what manhood is. That's a personal purview.
Hey, let me get Penny in real quick. Penny, what'd you?
No, I was just going to say, Paradise, you said the respect, that they should have the option to respect.
No, what I'm saying is a lot of times that's what happens in regards to the relationships. I either see one or two things. You see where parents say either my kids have no option but to respect the person that I'm with, or if my kids do not like them, we can't be together. It's always one or two of those extremes. Most times what I've seen, especially growing up with me, because I come from the country, you respect all adults. It don't matter how you feel about them. So that's a lot of times going into situations, man or woman, they tell you, I don't care how you feel about them, you have to respect them. And the children's idea of whatever goes on is overshadowed. It's completely built up a wall. It doesn't even give them an opportunity for conversation, which is why a lot of times children are harmed in these situations because adults have already made the decision for them.
Dwayne, what you got?
All right, so I have a blended family, right? And I came from a broken home. And listening to this, I do get the standpoint where y'all come from. I believe it's Paradise, you and Prototype. So both of y'all came from a nuclear family. I got that right? Not you, Prototype? All right. So Paradise, you came from a nuclear family. Prototype, you didn't. I came from a broken home. But as I'm hearing it, if it's selfish to then desire to be with someone that then has a kid, I look at my experience, and I remember dating this young lady shortly after high school, and she had a child. And after dating for a while, I was like, you know what, I don't want to do this because you got a child, and I don't want to do this. She's like, the child ain't got nothing to do with you. And she convinced me that was cool and that was okay. And I convinced myself. Years went by and we broke up. And I realized how selfish I was, how jacked up I was internally for that, because not just me too, also her, for her to also then say that as well, because how are you going to be in a relationship with someone and then not involve the child? So, but then fast forward, met my wife, my now wife. She had a daughter at the time. That was 8 when we first started dating. Same thing. Took a while before brought her around. But even whenever that happened, I took to it like as what y'all are saying about the whole mentor piece. Like whenever she started cutting up, it didn't take me any time to be like, no, that ain't gonna work. Just from the standpoint of that's a child. So early on, I was building a relationship with her. Like as for the respect piece that you were talking about, Paradise, like we got to respect each other. So as for the relationship, as for developing that relationship with the child, that comes between the adult and the child, the step parent and the child. So there is, of course, that the first relationship is between the two adults, and then it comes the child is next. But then that has to, you have to establish that, and then you get in, just like the whole mentoring thing. You get somebody out there in the community, right? A knucklehead. He might not respect you because respect is not something he was taught at home. But guess what? As a mentor, you start to develop that relationship and give them reasons to respect you from that standpoint. But then the difference is now, as a building a family, that piece, I'm not sure if y'all ever heard where somebody says, even though that ain't your kid, they be like, hey, they act like you or they look like you. They start to then adopt those traits from you, because guess what? Being so close to you, you start to rub off on them. And in that, as for you pushing stuff out into the community, that's what children are. You want to change the world, have kids. You want to change the world, have kids, right? So in that, whenever you see these lost children, and the Bible talks about it, the fatherless, right? Typically, like the fatherless, like you have to have compassion for that. And as for me, whenever I hear the word selfish being tossed around, there's so many men that they're like, hey, I want to be with a woman that has a kid. Rightfully so. It's your right and your prerogative. But if someone then chooses to, because they see there is a need for two parties, because guess what? That woman or that man that you choose to involve with, now you're building a relationship with that person, and you have the potential to make that person a better person. Not just their current circumstance, but their future, because now you're coming together in a marriage, which is a beautiful thing. So for the first person who didn't take care of their responsibility, that just got the pleasure out of it and then didn't own up to the responsibility, now someone else gets to come in and fill that spot. And that's how I look at it. And I think that from my standpoint, I don't see nothing selfish in that.
That's what's up. That was good. Hey, Dwayne, that's the long. Listen, when me and Dwayne have our conversations, that's how long he be talking. Just for y'all, you know what I'm saying? Hey, it's been good. Okay, so we're gonna go to the next topic. And it's somewhere along the lines of talking about the kids, and I'm interested to see your take on. Y'all talked about is the kid going to be a determining factor in the relationship of the two people, right? What does that look like? But more importantly, I probably may come back to that question, but I'm gonna ask this question like this: how does the step parent build an emotional connection? How does the step parent build an emotional connection? Because some of you all said that it may not be that they would need to even build one, but then another person said, well, that's a part of being in the community. Another person said it's a part of being a mentor. It's also a part of being, as far as being a father, it's a part of your role to embrace the kid. So I want to know what your thoughts are on how does a step parent build an emotional connection? What are some tools that you would give them? We'll start with you, Lost in Translation.
Thank you, Alma Dad. There are a few prerequisites that have to be in place before we can even begin. And it starts with the parent of the child. The parent of the child needs to transfer power to the person who's not the parent, because kids are not going to respect somebody that they don't have to. You see what I'm saying? And 9 times out of 10, if it's, say, for instance, if I was involved with a lady and she had a kid, she needs to say, hey, this is, and then at that point, they have just as much authority, power, this, that, and the other. Basically, what you're instilling is honor. You know what I mean? You have to build honor first. And as a man, you're called to protect, okay? You can't protect something that does not obey you. That's just how it is. We had a whole entire conversation about this last week. And you need that person to be able to to be able to honor you so they can listen to you. I don't know if you ever noticed it or not, but people who don't honor other people are not going to listen to them. There's an old saying that says, a man convinced against his will is of the same opinion still. They're not going to listen to you if they don't have an opportunity to honor you. Now, with that being said, once that honor has been built, then trust can be built. And at that point, then a relationship can be built. It has to be done in layers, because if you don't, you're going to miss a piece. You know what I mean? What's the point of telling somebody, hey, you know, this person has just as much authority as I do, but you talk to them any old kind of way. And then they see that. You see what I'm saying? You can't do that. And then at the same time, you can't put somebody else above your child and say, hey, look, you know, this person comes before you, because the child's not going to trust you at this point. You know what I mean? The child's going to be like, you're charged. You're my parent. That's how the child's going to look at it. So from all angles, you have to make sure that you handle situations like this delicately. You know what I mean? You got to look at the angle of the parent, who's actually the birth parent, the person who's stepping in, who's the step parent, and you also have to take accountability of the child. But at the end of the day, as the man, you're responsible. If you're going to be involved in this situation, if you're married, there needs to be a transference of power. There also needs to be an understanding. You know what I mean? That, hey, nobody's going to be left out in this particular situation, and everybody has a say so, because trust is only built when you have an opportunity to have a say so, and you're going to be heard. Because if you're not going to be heard, people are not going to trust you, and then people are not going to listen, and you're not going to build a bond, and you can't protect people, and it becomes a whole huge mess. So like I stated earlier, it really starts with the birth parent and whether or not they're willing to give up a certain amount of control and power, because it needs to be shared at that point, because if you don't, it's not going to work.
That's what's up. Who you got going next?
Let's go with Paradise.
I actually agree with that. A lot of the mentality around blended families is, this my child. And that happens even when they talking to the other parent. This is my child. So that again intercepts that biases, that prejudice, right? Like that inherent parent protection. I do think that that is one way of building a bond, building a connection. I also think that building a bond, building a connection looks like allowing that child to be in your personal space without trying to bite them. And I think that that's also bad. A lot of times, step parenting comes at the willpower of your resources. But your resources shouldn't be limited to your finances. It also should be, you know, your knowledge. Like at the end of the day, a step parent is a bonus parent, right? Like you're the parent that you additionally got. And in a lot of ways, that could be a blessing. You know, they have different traditions, they have different culture, they have different knowledge, they have different experiences, and you get to build a bond with them. And it's, you know, it's a very rewarding experience if people let it be that. However, I think that again, those two things, right? Like showing up for that child when they having something important going on, letting them know that you care about them the same way that they real parent, you know, their biological parent care about them. Allowing that child to again like learn things about your interests. You know, a lot of times there's a degree of separation there because people are trading the fence. They're trying not to be disrespectful. They're trying not to create conflict or bias in between them and the parent and them and the other parent and them and the child. You know, it's a lot of eggshells in that particular situation until they've been around for quite some time. So I think that that's a couple ways. The parent does need to relinquish power, right? Let your guard down, because that shows you're actually serious about the relationship and you're willing to accept the help. If you can accept them being disciplined, if you can accept them, you know, if you can accept the finances, you should be able to accept them being disciplined, right? Because morally, you may not look at things the same way, but that happens when you have children. The way that you ridicule is not going to be the way that your partner ridicules or deems something justifiable. Allowing them to provide alternatives, you know, and allowing them the safe space to be able to intercept and be that other additional parent that you want them to be. And you can't do it conditionally, because a lot of times people want the role model, but they want to pick and choose how they want that role model. And that's very unfair, not only to the child, but to the other person, because now you're intercepting and you're dividing the actual experience that they could have. It's only so much that you can do to bring them together because they're not blood. So when you have that other parent that's there that's putting limitations on how they can bond, that is a very frustrating situation. And again, it really doesn't matter if it's just simply them spending time together, being happy, buying stuff, Christmas or whatever, or them having to sit down, have a hard conversation about discipline.
That's what's up. Who you got going next? Paradise. Who you got going next?
Penny. Well, I'm sorry. Let's do Dwayne. Penny's not there.
Yeah, I'd agree with what y'all both said. It is important to also meet the child where they're at. And I do photography, and one of my favorite subjects to shoot are children, right? Because you hop on the scene, right? They don't know you, right? And you got to build that rapport with them. And it's amazing because at first, they latch on to their parents, right? And then, all right, it's time to go. It's showtime. And then you get them to crack. And once they crack, right, you then get to see that personality. You start to see who they really are. You then they start to open up and expose themselves to you. And I enjoy that. So that's the approach I look at it as well. I don't force myself on them. I allow being genuine to allow them to then open up to me, and then the same thing in that exchange. So that's how I look at it. That's the same thing for relationships. You meet somebody in a particular space, and then you get to jiving. So that to me is how, as we begin building that emotional relationship. But whenever it's real close like that, you meet them where they're at, you get involved in what they're interested in, and then hey, it meshes. But I will then say this too: they have the ability to stiff arm the dog mess out you. Oh boy, and that'd be the one of the best ones. You ain't my daddy. Quick to pull that card, right? You ain't my mama. Quick to pull that card, because guess what? It's a fact. It's a fact. But then they want to use that as for, hey, keep your distance. Like, back up. So, hey, both has a role to play. Some parents don't want to be. Some step parents don't want to be involved like that. Some stepchildren, they don't want to be involved like that, because that's how they keep that control. Prototype, what you got on?
If you could rethink my analogy of the bank, right? Of making those deposits so you could pull out later. You know what I'm saying? So it's time. You spend time, but effective time. You know what I'm saying? And over time, you show somebody you care about them, right? You're making those deposits, and then in return, when it's time for you to tell that kid, hey, take out the trash. Well, you already made these deposits. Sure. You fed me how many spaghetti meals? How many this? Like, you know what I'm saying? We done hung out. We done shot the ball at the hoop court. Like, you know what I'm saying? It's time. It's time deposits. And when it's time to withdraw, you can withdraw. The only problem is people try to withdraw when they ain't made no deposits. You know what I'm saying? And that's where you get that pushback. So keep it that simple.
That's dope.
That was good.
That's dope.
Who you got going next, Prolo?
I guess give me a second. He's the only one left, right?
Ash got it.
Yeah.
Oh, Ash.
Okay.
Go ahead, Ash.
Okay, y'all done took everything, so I don't know what to tell y'all. Pretty much I agree with everything, because to me it's like what I don't see is like the step parent actually making the actual connection. I'm just gonna speak from experience. It's like you got grown people not wanting to sit down and just have a conversation and get to know the child. Children are their own people. When they go in their room, you see them. You see it from the art that they have on the wall, or you see it by the clothes, the hairstyle. You see them. But as a step parent, you don't want to take that time out. It's like, well, if they don't make an effort, I'm not gonna make an effort. But if you're not making an effort, how are you gonna connect with somebody? But then you want them to respect you. My thing is, if you're going to play the role, you're going to step in, you need to step in wholeheartedly. Yeah, it's going to be days that the kid don't want to deal with you. It's days my kids don't want to deal with me. But hey, it is what it is. As a parent, I still got to show up, whether I'm happy, mad, sad, or angry. And that's the same thing goes with that kid. And a lot of times you see people like, oh, okay, you got attitude. Let me step back. No, no, no. Where the attitude coming from? Let's talk about this. What led to this? Because I think a lot of it is that we don't want to value the kid actual opinion and their feelings at that time. Because sometimes you can say something that you don't mean to hurt their feelings, but it does. It hit them. It hit a tender spot and it's not where you're going for. And sometimes you may need to redirect or say, hey, let's cool off. Let's revisit this conversation and see what's going on. It's just being an adult and understanding that sometimes you do have to go into the child's space in order to get that child to come to your space. Because I think a lot of times is we put these barriers around, oh, I'm an adult, you're a child, stay in a child place. No, because if my adult actions is having a negative or an adverse effect on you, I need to know this because sometimes I'm acting in my role as an adult and I'm moving forward and not thinking about you. And that's the way I look at step parent. Like you're over there having a good time with the dad or the mom, but you're not considering what's going on with the child. You know what I'm saying? Because you're setting up a boundary and it's more or less, oh, you're taking my dad from me. You're taking time that I have. Or my dad's over there spending time with your kids and making these memories that I want. You're instilling hate and jealousy. And a lot of times we don't come back and visit those particular feelings. And that's where we get the miscommunication. And also that's where when we have these funerals or when somebody big in the family dies on either other side, you bring the kids and everybody don't know nothing. Or we wonder why this kid is sitting over there, like, why I'm here. This is just another day at work, because ain't nothing been going on. But then you got the step parent over there trying to hug them. And, oh, it should have been me, Lord. No, 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 no. Let's not do this. What do you want? What you need? But we don't do that. We don't come together and try to actually bond the child in. It's like we're bonded, but we're not bonding you with the child. It's just like, I'm here, I'm present. What you gonna do about it? And you don't really see how that child feels about that, because with my oldest, she already told me that's a no-go for her. We ain't got no daddy, we ain't getting no stepdaddy, don't even think about it. So, okay. But if it were to come down to that point, we would have to work that in because this has been our situation. It's just been us, and a lot of times that if you do want to introduce somebody, you got to do it slowly. You know what I'm saying? Because she's not only going to be dealing with what I'm bringing in, but then you got to deal with the fact is my dad is not here. Why I got to look at you? You know what I'm saying? Or you can't tell me that. My dad don't tell me that. Why? What make you think you can? You have to come in and try to mediate, but also not dictate that to where you're in favoritism of the child because the child can be wrong. I'm gonna tell you, my show can be wrong. Okay. But at the same time, it's like we need to make sure that these children know that as adults, we do want relationships. We do want love. We do want this. But at the same time, when you're stepping in and you are the step parent, is what it is in the definition, you got to step in wholeheartedly and sometimes reach out to that child because you don't know the dynamics of the walls that child has put up.
That's
we're going to go with, give me a second.
Okay. Yeah. My dad gave me some advice about 8 years ago. He said, you got to let it happen naturally. You can't rush the pace on what that looks like. And you got to understand that presence and consistency is the biggest form of currency as a co-parent, as a bonus parent, much like what you said, Ash, because you don't know the layers that the child, you only know what the parent has shared with you, but you don't know how the child feels about what the parent has shared with you. And I think that takes time to really unpack those layers. And I think a lot of times when you stepped into a co-parenting situation, you try to build Rome in one day. You try to be super dad in one day. You try to be, you try to fix all the discipline problems in one day when an element of consistency or element of presence can go a long way in the foundational construct of how that child is able to kind of traverse in the relationship as you all are kind of coming together. And then the biggest thing is like, you can't get emotional. You have to be available. You got to have capacity. You got to have empathy, but you can't be emotional because there are some times where if you don't have your emotions in check, while you're trying to build that emotional connection, you could feel rejected. And that can turn into a form of resentment if you don't have your emotions in check. You could say, "Oh, I'm doing everything I possibly can to be this great father, to be this great leader. I'm good to your mama. Why are you not accepting me?" And I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that, you came into it overly emotional instead of just kind of saying, "Hey, I'm prioritizing the child right now." And no matter how long it takes, no matter what it looks like, no matter how many times they spit in my face. I'm not saying the kids literally do that, but I mean, take it, everybody that has their biological parent, you done been disrespectful before. God forbid it come from somebody that didn't make you. You know what I mean? So that's a whole slap in the face. But you got to let it happen naturally. You got to make sure you have your emotions in check. Co-parenting is hard. It just is. It's for real. Go ahead. Sorry.
I wanted to incorporate something about that when you talk about having your emotions in check, because it's one thing when your child hurts your feelings.
Yeah.
It's another thing when somebody else's child hurt your feelings and your intentions is nothing but pure behind them. Yeah. And I feel like because we are the adults in the situation, that should be overshadowed. And then we don't really talk about the fact that a lot of times there could be the other parent helping that child hurt your feelings, because you get an emotional attachment to them, especially if you're a pure-hearted person and you genuinely love kids. If you genuinely love kids and not just having the love of the parent, right? Because some people do that, and to me that's a little bit, it's not organic, but it still happens where you're sitting there and you're creating this dynamic and you're trying to go above and beyond and show up for that child, respecting their boundaries, respecting the parents' boundaries. But when that child, get a little mind of their own and they feel the need to disrespect you or come at you a certain type of way, we really don't talk about how that plays a huge part in how you navigate the situation going forward, or how that makes you feel as an adult. Because what happens when your partner bagged them up in that feeling, right? There's a huge sense of conflict there. And again, we never really give the kids credence to them having ownership of how they navigate the relationship with you. They control that the same way that they go to school and they have a relationship with a teacher. They get to pick how they react to that. What they don't necessarily get to always have a say-so in is their autonomy of how they react with their biological parents. It's a lot of conflicting feelings with their biological parents because it's easier to forgive. But showing up for a person every single day, right? And then when they leave or you're separated from them, let's just say the relationship didn't work out. Now you sitting there recognizing the fact that you didn't put your all into this just to kind of for it to be, again, a thankless job. Should you be going into it looking for some type of praise? No. But there is that underlying understanding that this could go to hell and there is no reward for what you get in the end, despite how much of a morally good person you were. And that's why that bias of your own kids versus other people's kids is still there.
You're on mute for a reason. Hey, Penny, what you got on it? Did you know what the question was?
No, but I would say, I think it was emotional connection. How do you build emotional connection?
Yes.
I don't know what's the right or wrong answer to that, because I've never seen it play all the way through. As far as I've dated somebody with children, but I've never seen them grow up. And I've also I've said on the podcast a lot of times, I've helped I helped my ex raise his sister's kids for about a year and a half. And it was a 7-year-old, a 5-year-old, and a 2 and a 3-year-old. And I had them for a year and a half. And basically, I think that emotional connection, it did come quickly. It didn't, it's not something that I had to simmer on, or I had to take my time patiently with, because you're with those children every day. And so you're making those sacrifices, you're spending that time, you're spending your time with those kids every day. So it wasn't something that I had to kind of simmer down on. I had to really see where their parents were lacking quickly and see how I could help fill that void with those children. And when they were taken away from me, because I do feel like they were taken away from me, even though I knew they would be, when they were taken away, that emotional connection was there, as if I wanted them for myself. So it is the way that you go into it, the way you go into looking at it. You don't expect to have that emotional bond with those children, but if you're pure-hearted and you are there to take care of children, and that's what I had to keep in my mind, playing in my mind, was these are God's children. These are not her children, his children. These are God's children. So you make sure God's children eat. You make sure they sleep. You make sure you give them hugs. You make sure you're there for them where their parents are not. And I wouldn't say that it's a thankless job, because you get fulfillment in that, knowing that you were a part of that upbringing. They'll never forget about you. They'll never forget about you when they're grown, or when they're the child that I've helped take care of. She reached out to me about her homecoming. She was running to be homecoming queen, and she asked me what my ideas were, and I hadn't talked to her in almost 2 years. They don't forget about you. So I don't think it's a thankless job. I think it's the way that you're looking at it. And if you look at it as if they're God's children, then I think, it'll all work out in the end, despite what the parents are going through. But I do think that the parents are the ones who make it the hardest. Throughout my dating, it was always the parents that didn't have those boundaries set with each other. They didn't have, I guess they didn't work out. So their way of parenting was different anyways, So going with two different people, and you trying to be, the one that's telling him, it would be him in my case, but telling him try to reason with her, trying to do these things, to make the dynamic work. But that's the hardest thing is those adult children, dealing with those. So it can be a grown man still acting like a child when it comes to his child and his baby mama. So so dealing with that is the hardest part.
Wow, that's good. I mean, this is really good information. One of the reasons why I wanted to talk about this is I'm in a blended family, and my wife has a 22-year-old, and I have 4 kids under the age of 14, right? And my wife has been spectacular in being a stepmom to my kids. Like what Give Me a Second said, he said, I think it would be a good idea to introduce them early, because you don't want to get involved within this relationship, and then there'll be a situation with the kids, right? Not that the kid is going to determine everything, but if it's not a smooth enough transition, it doesn't make any sense to go further. One of the things also that as I'm listening to you all, I'm seeing that the emotional connections that she made with them were just phenomenal. My particular situation is that they lost their mom, right? And so as a result of them losing their mom, they don't have the connection with her anymore, right, in that regard. And so what Kendra did was she made their birthday special, all of them to some, whatever it was that they wanted, basically she would provide for them. But not only that, she would remember things that they had told her that they didn't know that she would remember. Right? My kids are into anime, and so she would talk to them about that. She allows my 2 youngest, well, not my youngest, but my girls, they cook with her. Paradise was talking about that, letting them into your world. My oldest was the person that was cooking right after my late wife passed away. And so now that I'm married, she wasn't going to have that. And she loved that she's now able to cook with Kendra. My sons, they love her, even though they don't have much of a conversation with her. And I had a conversation with them before I even thought about before I even thought about dating. Like, what was y'all mind? What do y'all mindset about daddy dating somebody that's not going to be obviously your mom? And their perspective was that they wanted daddy to be happy, right? So everybody doesn't have it like that, but that's how I had it. And so what I'm hearing is that if you're going into a blended family, there needs to be a lot of dialogue between everybody, right? You and that partner, you and the kids, you and if that person, that parent is in the picture, that's not going to be in the relationship. Like, it needs to be a community in which that these kids can operate and be able to be functional in, right, and be productive individuals, because it's very much challenging. I think Penny said it. I don't think it's a thankless job, because kids remember what you did for them. You know what I'm saying? They remember what you did and what you didn't do for them. And so right now, I mean, I would say we're somewhat of a blended family. Like being on the podcast, we have different perspectives coming together, trying to work out a goal and help others reach that particular goal, which is the benefit of the children. You know, so this has been a really good conversation. I appreciate it. I may have to do this again because, like I said, this is one of the things that I see as a teacher all the time, that most of the students in my class, not my class, sorry, but the class I go in, they're going to be in a blended family or in a blended family, right? Most of them do not operate in a nuclear family. So we're going to get the last words. What's your takeaways, giveaways, or however you want to say, and where can they find you? Okay, and we'll start with Prototype.
Man, you can find me at Prototype Dad Podcast Tuesday nights at 9. We talk about stuff like this all the time. We all come from different perspectives. We talk about all kind of men stuff. Man, tonight's conversation, my takeaway is, man, we still got a lot of work in getting men to accept their role in life. So we're just going to keep pushing at that, man. And it is what it is.
Prototype, you realize we're going to always need work? Like that's just the nature of until we meet our maker.
That's what a prototype is, right? It's an unfinished product.
Yeah.
But you are an example.
That's what's up. Penny, on you. I know we can't find you nowhere, so we'll just
find me
ask
on
you.
here on Humble Dad. You can find me on here. I think my biggest takeaway is that I did think that maybe the kids shouldn't be introduced, but now hearing from the different perspectives, I think, yeah, maybe the kids should be introduced quickly, because I mean, they get introduced to your friends and you don't have some friends for a long period of time. They'll be okay. They'll be okay. So if they're not right for them, get them in and get them out. So yeah.
On you, give me a second. Did I get you out on time? I know it's a little late for you, but you know what I'm saying? I appreciate you coming by.
No, thanks for having me. Simply put, man, the kids are next to be here. Keep them first. Communicate with your significant other. And just always keep them the priority, man. You can find me at Give Me a Second podcast on IG, Facebook. And we're also leveraging a space called Real Reckless Podcast, where we're doing a live and in-person live recording here in the North Carolina area. So if you're in the area, you know, we could purchase tickets. We're going to have things on Eventbrite and things like that. So you can purchase your tickets and come on out to our live recording.
That's dope, bro. Yeah. Paradise, on you.
Thank you for having me again. I appreciate you reaching out. This is my first time. But I will say my takeaway is, being a step parent, you need to realize that you have to be as selfless as possible. Even if you have children of your own, you have to be as selfless as possible. However, you can do that with reaffirming and inserting boundaries, so that you don't feel like that you're being taken advantage of. And of course, people can find me several places: on TikTok at _Paradise Paris 1, on Instagram and Facebook at Paradise Paris, on Twitter at _Paradise Paris 1, and of course here on YouTube at Just Landed in Paris. I live stream every Wednesday, and then of course I'm on the Lapeep Network every Thursday evening.
That's a dope name, by the way. Just Landed in Paris. I just want to say that's a dope name. That's a crazy name. I like that. That's dope.
That's what's up. Hey, Lost in Translation, on you, homie.
Thank you, sir. Humble Dad, once again, thank you for allowing me to come to the podcast once again. My takeaway from this particular situation is making sure that honor is the call to order from parents and children, because honor establishes direction. And if you have a direction, then you'll know exactly where you're going. That works with any relationship, blended or not blended. You guys can find me in a lot of places on Friday nights on my podcast at 8 o'clock, Lost in Translation podcast. And then after that, 8:30 on Black Men and Filters in the Barbershop. Then on Sunday, you can find me as hosting Sir Hell Speaks Super Sunday. And then, of course, you can find me here on Monday on Humble Dads, and also on Tuesday on Black Men and Filters Network on Talk That Talk Tuesday. And also you can find me on Instagram. at Lost in Translation Podcast _ between each words.
That's what
Thank
I'm
you so much.
talking about.
You just everywhere.
Indeed.
Oh, I need to step my
Everywhere.
podcast game
Tuesday,
up.
Wednesday.
Right.
I need to step my game up.
Go ahead, translation.
Hey, when you good, they want you. You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
Ash, on you.
Okay, my takeaway is basically accept these children. If you're gonna be there, but you gotta be there wholeheartedly. Like, you can't go in with set boundaries because those set boundaries may not work for that child. It goes back to what I was saying about the walls that is built up from the other parents or the parents' action. So I definitely would take away everybody. If you're gonna be involved, everybody's opinion matter, everybody's feelings matter. We can't treat these kids like they don't matter and put them in the back burner and say, hey, welcome to the table. Eat, get out. Grown folks talking, you know. You can find me at 360.diva on Instagram and here when I cooperate. That's it.
Last but not least, my homie, my friend. Hey, on you, Dwayne.
Oh man, I learned do not use the word call around prototype without a bulletproof vest on, a neck brace, nothing. Don't say you're calling in to work. Don't say roll call. Don't say Call of Duty. Don't say nothing about call. All right. I'm a quick study prototype. I got you. Oh man, no. I'll say my takeaway. I did learn something. I did learn there's a different perspective from those who are brought up in a nuclear family. As for like what they as for the difference in desires or choices. I'll put it like that. I haven't thought about it from that perspective. So that was interesting to hear, and I appreciate that. You can find me on Monday nights whenever my computer's cooperating, whenever I'm able to get dinner out on time. Here on HD. Appreciate you again, HD, for having me tonight. Appreciate that. And you can also
bro, this wouldn't happen if it weren't for you. You know what I'm saying? You're the one that said, let's do it.
Hey,
that's why we're here.
I don't want that shine. I don't want that shine. That's all you, man.
Well, it's too late. You know what I'm saying? For all those that are out there, make sure you like, share, subscribe to the channel. And my biggest takeaway is that the community is the community. You know what I'm saying? Whatever you need to do, whatever you called to do or not called to do, then you need to do that. You know what I'm saying? And once again, I got the dopest show on YouTube. That's just my take. Listen, I'm going to be like Dion. I'm going to just speak it. You know what I'm saying? No matter what you say, that's what I say. And until next time, we out here. Deuces. All right, people. Y'all have a good one.
The boy is dangerous.
Bad feeling about this.
You don't seem to understand something.
The thing that I like most about being a dad is that I see that I'm about to impact the world.